Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG Podcast. I'm Ty Glenn. Hopefully you guys are having a great Monday. Got lots of NHL news to discuss, so make sure to stay tuned in to this episode until the end. As always, do me a favor. Hit the like, subscribe buttons. You're watching the podcast on YouTube. Make sure that you're following the Hockey Talk with TG Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So make sure that you give this podcast a follow so you can stay up to date on the latest hockey news that is trending and the latest episodes of the Hockey Talk with TG Podcast. Particularly, I'll be doing an episode after every game of the Stanley Cup Final. So make sure to stay tuned in to the Hockey Talk with TG Podcast. For that, make sure that you are following on audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. And if you normally watch the podcast on YouTube, make sure you hit that big red subscribe button on the right bottom of your screen. But without further ado, we are going to go ahead and get started. So we'll start by recapping Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. And it was another OT thriller as Brad Marchand scored the overtime game winner to give the Panthers a 5-4 win in double overtime against the Edmonton Oilers. This was his second goal of the game. Of course, he had that shorthanded goal back in the second period. And then he scores in overtime. This is his fifth career playoff overtime goal. And just like the goal in the second period, it came on a breakaway. And he wins the game in double overtime. And this series is now tied up at one game apiece. He has 7 shots on goal in Game 2. And I put this note out there because Brad Marchand had a lot of chances to win Game 2. And, of course, he scored 2 goals on 7 shots. But he had some pretty good chances on the other shots, but couldn't get it to go past through a Skinner. For instance, Brad Marchand, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this was a breakaway, or maybe it wasn't, but he was going in on Stuart Skinner. He went 5-hole past Stuart Skinner. The puck went under his legs, 5-hole. Or I think Skinner might have made a save or not, but he tried to go 5-hole. I think it did on the second chance, and on that second chance, the puck had glanced off the right post and stayed out in there. So he had a lot of chance in this game. And he finally buried the OT game winner for, the second goal of the game and stuff. And we got a 1-1 series heading to Sunrise for Game 3. And fun fact, Brad Marchand now has 10 career goals in the Stanley Cup Finals, which is most among active players, tying him third all time. So another cool stat to add from Brad Marchand. Sam Bennett also scored in this game. He scored the opening goal in this game for his 13th goal of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And fun fact, with his 13th goal in the playoffs and his 12th goal on the road, he has set a new record for most playoff goals on the road. So he has been an absolute road warrior in this one. And I know James Sikora joked on NHL Network whether Sam Bennett should stay in Edmonton or not, considering the way that he's playing on the road. He's been an absolute dog when it comes to playing on the road. So at home, he's good at home too. He has 7 goals at home. 7 goals at home, 6 goals on the road. But 12th goal on the road, excuse me. 12th goal on the road and 1 goal at home. He's kind of good at playing at home, but on the road, he's just a whole different person. And Sam Bennett now has 19 points in 19 games played in the playoffs, 13 goals, 6 assists for 19 points in 19 playoff games so far. And Seth Jones and Dmitry Kulikov also scored for Florida in this win, and Sergei Bobrovsky made 42 saves for the Panthers. And for the Edmonton Oilers, they had a strong period early as they got goals from Evander Kane, Evan Bouchard, and Leon Draisaitl. And man, oh man, what a play from Connor McDavid to set up Leon Draisaitl for that third goal for the Oilers. That was an outstanding play, a highlight reel play right there from Connor McDavid. If you haven't seen it, it's on Sportsnet, it's on the NHL YouTube page, it's on Twitter. You can find this play anywhere. So Connor McDavid, he made a fancy move around Florida Panthers captain Alexander Barkov and defenseman Aaron Ekblad, and then he saw Leon Draisaitl wide open from his sweet spot from the right circle, and Leon Draisaitl one-times it past Sergei Bobrovsky. Outstanding play that was. And again, this is on Sportsnet. It's on NHL YouTube page. It's on Twitter. It's on TikTok. You can find this play anywhere, and I will put one of the links in the description so you guys can watch it if you haven't seen it. But unreal play that was from Connor McDavid. Set that goal up. In fact, that first period, it was a 5-goal first period. So it was a first period frenzy almost in game 2. And fun fact, this is one of the quickest starts in the first period in Stanley Cup Finals history. Of course, Sam Bennett and Seth Jones had the goals for the Panthers in the first period. And then, like I said, for the Oilers, Evander Kane, Evan Bouchard, and Leon Draisaitl score for Edmonton. Corey Perry also scored in this game. He had the game-tying goal with 17.8 seconds remaining in regulation after the Oilers pulled Stuart Skinner to get the sixth attacker out on the ice, forcing overtime, and eventually the second overtime. And Stuart Skinner, despite the loss, he had a solid good game as well, making 37 saves in the loss. Game 3 will be in Sunrise, Florida on Monday. And the game will air on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max for you guys to watch. But speaking of the Stanley Cup Finals and stuff, before we shift to Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final, we got to take a look back at Games 1 and Games 2 of the Stanley Cup Final, because those games have been absolute thrillers, absolute cinema from start to finish. And NFL football star J.J. Watt said it best: nothing beats the Stanley Cup playoff. I certainly agree with that quote. Not even the NBA Finals are better than the Stanley Cup playoffs, because of course most people have the Thunder winning the NBA Finals. Of course, that series is now tied up at 1 game apiece, just like this series heading to Game 3 in Indianapolis. That series is not better than the Stanley Cup Final. In fact, most people probably have the Thunder winning that series, considering how stacked they are. But anyway, if you are not watching the Stanley Cup Final, what are you doing? You should be tuning in to these games each single night until the NHL season is over, because we have been given some great games. We have been given some great games. We didn't even see none of this last year. In last year's Stanley Cup Final, we didn't see an overtime game. We didn't see consecutive overtime games. It was nothing like this. And you got to know, this is a rematch. It's a rematch from last year's Stanley Cup Final. These two teams, Florida Panthers, Edmonton Oilers, they faced each other in last year's Stanley Cup Final, and we saw nothing like this. This is a completely different year, completely different games, because of course Game 1 started in Florida last year, Game 1 started in Edmonton this year. So it's been absolute thrillers from start to finish for the first 2 games of the Stanley Cup Final, and it wouldn't surprise me if each and every single one of these games could go into overtime, just like the first 2 games did. And like most people expect or anticipate, this could go to a 7-game series. I'm still sticking with the Oilers in 6, but again, wouldn't surprise me if it did go to 7 games like it did last year. But let's dive into it, shall we? Let's share some key takeaways from Games 1 and Games 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. So, of course, Game 1 was a 4-3 overtime win for the Edmonton Oilers. Of course, the Oilers stormed back from a 3-1 deficit. They tied the game up, won it 4-3 in overtime. Leon Draisaitl scored the overtime game winner. Of course, assisted from Connor McDavid to Draisaitl. Like, we haven't seen that a bunch of times so far during the times on the Edmonton Oilers. He had the overtime game-winning goal with 31 seconds remaining. Of course, the Panthers got off to a strong start in the first two frames of Game 1 with goals by Sam Bennett. He scored twice in that game. And then Brad Marchand coming on the power play. But they choked the lead and they lost to the Edmonton Oilers. The top line, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, was key to winning Game 1. So those are some key takeaways from Game 1. Game 2, the Stars showed up again, but this time for the Florida Panthers. Brad Marchand, he scored twice in this game. Of course, one of his goals being the shorthanded goal in the second period, and then scoring the overtime, I should say double overtime, game winner, 8 minutes and 5 seconds into double overtime. And of course, Sam Bennett broke a record with his 13th career playoff goal and his 12th goal in a row. He's now, I said this already, he's now set a new record for most playoff goals on the road. I don't think nobody's beating that, or at least not for a long time, not. And Seth Jones and Dmitry Kulikov also added goals in this game, of course, showcasing the depth that the Florida Panthers have. And this game was also filled with a lot of penalties. 14 penalties in this game, which of course led to 10 power plays. And this game too had a lot of fireworks than Game 1 did. But overall takeaways from Games 1 and 2 of the Stanley Cup Final, it has certainly been entertaining. You could not have asked for a better Stanley Cup Final. And they should be talking about this on ESPN. They should be talking about this on First Take. Stephen A. Smith, Molly, invite PK Subban on the show, another hockey analyst. You guys should be talking about this on your show, First Take. This is the biggest thing that is going on right now. Well, besides the NBA Finals. But again, NBA Finals are no better than the Stanley Cup Finals. I mean, we have been seeing a lot of overtime games. At least first two games have gone into overtime. This has been absolute cinema from start to finish. Game 1, the NBA Finals, all we saw was Tyrese Haliburton hitting another clutch shot. And then Game 2, the Thunder stormed their way past the Pacers to even up the series. And again, most people probably had the Thunder winning that series. Stanley Cup Final, whole different scenario. I mean, either one of these teams could win, Panthers or Oilers, which I'm hoping it's the Oilers. I don't want to see Florida win again. Connor McDavid deserves the Stanley Cup. I want him to win the Stanley Cup. Another takeaway from Games 1 and Games 2 of the Stanley Cup Final is the goaltending duo Sergei Bobrovsky versus Stuart Skinner. Those two netminders have put on absolute clinics in there. They had made some unreal saves. They have been playing really good in the crease. And another key takeaway, top stars showing up. So, of course, for Game 1, it was McDavid and Draisaitl. For Game 2, it was Brad Marchand. Brad Marchand was key to winning this game. For Game 2, even up the series at 1, heading home for Game 3 in Sunrise, Florida. For Game 1, it was McDavid and Draisaitl, dynamic duo. So the top stars are showing up for this series. And another thing is, the depth players are certainly making an impact. Florida's middle and defensive lines contributed key goals and control possession. The Oilers side, they have gotten some depth players stepping up for them too, but I don't know if it's as good as Florida's depth right now. But we'll just have to see how everything will go throughout the series. And a final thought, this series is shaping into a classic series. So again, we saw nothing like this last year. It was nothing like this last year. This year's Stanley Cup Final is way better than last year. I mean, of course, we saw the Oilers come back from a 3-0 series deficit and forcing in Game 7 and unfortunately losing that Game 7. But now we're seeing 2 overtimes already in the Stanley Cup Final, and I hope we get a third overtime in Game 3. I mean, I'm pretty sure every hockey fan, whether you're a Panthers or Oilers fan, or you maybe just the avid hockey fan, you tune in every once in a while. You don't really watch hockey a lot, but you like it a little bit that you tune in every once in a while. Maybe you want to see another overtime in this game, making a third straight game with another overtime. But we'll just have to see how Game 3 turns out tonight. But now I want to talk about Brad Marchand's impact on the Florida Panthers. Of course, he's been an absolute star, absolute beast, whatever you want to call it, in the Stanley Cup playoffs so far. I mean, he was pivotal in that Game 7 against Toronto in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Of course, he's now 5-0 all time against Toronto in Game 7s, and I think overall in his career. And now he has played another big role in winning Game 2 for the Florida Panthers. And he's just fitting so seamlessly with the group ever since coming over from the trade deadline. And I know Bruins fans don't want to hear that because they want Brad Marchand to still be a Boston Bruin, which if I was a Bruins fan, I probably wouldn't want to hear that either. But you got to admit, Brad Marchand has fitted so seamlessly in the group. He's been a key addition for this Florida Panthers team. And so has Seth Jones. I mean, as a Blackhawks fan, we need to get rid of Seth Jones. We need to get rid of Seth Jones because he was playing terrible in Chicago with us. And I didn't see where he would fit into the Blackhawks rebuild. So we had to get rid of him. But it paid off because he is doing a very good job on the Florida Panthers. He's looked like his old self again. But anyways, going back to Brad Marchand now. Brad Marchand was injured at least a few of the games for the Bruins this season. We didn't even know if he was going to suit up for the Florida Panthers the second half of the season because he's been out with injuries. But it's certainly paying off, though, because he has just been a terrific addition for this Florida Panthers team. And I'm pretty sure next year he's going to have, in his full season with the Florida Panthers, if he decides to stay with the Florida Panthers. The reason why I say that is because he's going to be a free agent this offseason. And there is a chance that the Florida Panthers could re-sign him. I mean, he's been an absolute dog on the team and playing with Sam Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk. He's been an absolute dog, and we could see Brad Marchand back on the Florida Panthers for next season. And he's been a great veteran leader for this Florida Panthers team, guiding stars like Sam Bennett, Anton Lundell, Matthew Tkachuk, with that veteran insight and composure, like being a key player in that locker room almost. So, yeah, I can't really speak too much about that because I don't follow the Florida Panthers. I mean, of course, you guys listen to this podcast a lot. And you watch the TG Hockey Channel. My favorite NHL team is Chicago Blackhawks. So I can't really say too much about Brad Marchand's impact on the Florida Panthers, but he has just been an unreal player to watch on the team. And, you know, it still kind of feels weird seeing him in the Florida Panthers jersey, considering that he's played 16, maybe 17 seasons with the Boston Bruins, 16, 17 seasons with the Boston Bruins. So he's been a Bruin for a long time. So, I mean, I'm still trying to get used to seeing Marshy on the Florida Panthers, the team that he's faced before in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And of course, the Panthers took them out when he was still on the Bruins in 2023, and they eliminated the President's Trophy wins because the Bruins won the President's Trophy that year. And he actually had a stellar 2022-23 year. The Panthers eliminated them in 7 games. So, But again, he's just been a terrific addition from the Boston Bruins and coming on to the Florida Panthers. I think this was a W move by General Manager Bill Zito to get him at the deadline. And of course, a move that has shocked everybody, even myself, and especially Boston Bruins fans. But again, it's just been a terrific player to watch. And I hope he keeps up this momentum throughout this series of the Stanley Cup Final. But anyway, we're going to be talking about the Dallas Stars firing head coach Pete DeBoer last Friday. So this was a move that has shocked a lot of hockey fans. I was going to say a lot of people, but again, a lot of hockey fans. This move has shocked a lot of hockey fans, shocked a lot of Dallas Stars fans, shocked a lot of people. Move that, we didn't even see coming. But this was done after the Dallas Stars lost in their third Western Conference Final appearance. As of right now, as I'm recording this episode, no replacement has been named. But I think I know why this move happened. And I think it has something to do with Pete DeBoer's comments on Jake Oettinger when he pulled them in Game 5. And this is what he said about that, and I quote, "Anytime you pull a goalie, the reason is always to try and spark your group." So that was the number one reason. We had talked endlessly in this series about trying to play with the lead. Obviously, we were in a 2-0 hold right away. I didn't take that lightly, and I didn't blame it all on Jake. But the reality is you go back to last year's playoffs, he's lost 6 of his 7 last games to Edmonton. We gave up 2 shots on 2 goals in an elimination game. It was partly to spark our team and wake them up, and partly knowing the status quo had not been working. It was a pretty big sample size. So that was what he said about Jake Oettinger. And when I first saw this happen, I was kind of surprised that this happened too, because normally you wouldn't see a head coach pull your goalie after giving up 2 goals in the game. You wouldn't see that. You would not see that in a hockey game. Usually, especially in an elimination game. Even in an elimination game, you wouldn't see that. But let's just say if you're playing a hockey game, right? And you're down. This was in the first period, by the way, when Jake Oettinger was pulled, obviously, because, of course, 2 goals on 2 shots, obviously, in the first period. But let's just say it's the first period. You're playing a hockey game. It's the first period. Your team is down 4-0 at the end of the first period. I can see if your team was down 4 or 5 goals at the end of the first period, you might want to pull your goalie, get in your backup goalie for the second period. But to pull your goalie after giving up 2 shots, it's just so shocking and surprising. Why would you even do that? Well, he explained why, but still, I don't get his reason for doing that. Again, this was a move. I mean, he explained why, but still, even with his explanation, I still don't understand why he did what he did. Jake Oettinger is a star goaltender. No pun intended. He is a star goaltender. And he said himself that he wasn't expecting that to happen. He also said that it was embarrassing that it did happen. And I would probably be embarrassed if that happened to me. And I never played goalie in my life in hockey. I was always a right winger. When I played hockey, and I still do play hockey, recreational by the way, I was a right winger. I never played goalie in my life, so I can't speak too much about that. But if I was in this position, I would be embarrassed of that too. And I'd also be kind of questioning the coach of why you pulled me after giving up 2 shots. But the Dallas Stars did put in Casey Smith, and then after that, just almost a minute, 2-3 minutes later, the Oilers make it 3-0, and then they eventually, win the game. I believe 4-1 was the final score. Was it 4-1 or 4-2? I don't know. I forgot the final score in Game 5. But anyway, obviously a shocking move that Peter DeBoer did on Jake Oettinger. But taking a look at his stats for the Dallas Stars and his stats for this season, Peter DeBoer guided the Stars to a 50, 26, and 6 record with 106 points and led the Stars to their third Western Conference Final appearance this season. And overall, in his 3 seasons with Dallas, he had a 149, 68, and 29 record with them and was 29, 27 in the playoffs with the team. And he won the Central Division title with the Stars in the 2023-24 season with a 52, 21, and 9 record with 113 points. Overall, Pete DeBoer has a coaching record of 662, 447, and 152 with the Panthers, Devils, Sharks, Golden Knights, and Stars. He led the Devils to the Stanley Cup Final in 2012, and he led the Sharks to a Stanley Cup Final in 2016, and he's 97 and 82 in the playoffs. And we can't forget that Game 7 record, 9-0 in Game 7. So can't forget that record. That record probably might be broken. Records are meant to be broken, but we'll just have to see if it does be broken or not. I have a feeling it will get broken eventually because, again, records are meant to be broken. Overall thoughts, I don't know where Dallas goes from here. I'm pretty sure they'll find a great head coach. Hopefully they get Jay Woodcroft, because I know Brewers are getting Marco Stern, Penguins are getting Dan Muse, and Blackhawks getting Jeff Blashill as their head coach. And Jay Woodcroft still doesn't have a coaching job for some reason. So maybe Jay Woodcroft comes to Dallas. Who knows? We'll just have to see how General Manager Jim Neal handles this situation. And we'll see what happens for the Dallas Stars heading into the offseason and heading into next season. But now it's time to get to the keys to the game for Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final. And, of course, we'll do this segment every time before a game of the Stanley Cup Final, by the way, because I did this for Games 1 and Games 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. Just letting you guys know, I'm always going to do my keys to the game before every game of the Stanley Cup Final. But let's take a look at the keys to the game for Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final as it shifts from Edmonton to Sunrise. And man, oh man, that is a long drive, long flight from Edmonton to Florida, because of course, you know, Florida is in the south, it's on the east coast, whereas Edmonton way up in Canada on the west coast almost. So yeah, it's way up in Canada. Florida's just down in the south. So long drive, long flight, 2,000 and something miles from Edmonton to Florida. They did this last year. Now they're doing it again this year. But anyway, keys to the game for Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final for the Florida Panthers. Sergei Bobrovsky's continued excellence. So Sergei Bobrovsky has a .912 save percentage in the playoffs so far. It has been Florida's backbone in the crease. His composure at home could tilt the balance of the series. And number 2, physical presence in forecheck. The Panthers had the most hits in Game 2, 60-39. So they led the hits in Game 2 with 60 hits. Riding that physical wave in front of a roaring home crowd can wear Edmonton down. Number 3, depth score and secondary contributions. We saw this in Game 1. We saw this in Game 2. Florida's depth will need to stay productive if they wanted to take a 2-1 series lead against the Edmonton Oilers. And number 4, maintain penalty dominance. The Oilers are 2 for 10 on the power play in the first 2 games of this series. Florida must stay structured and limit those chances, because the Oilers' power play unit, especially their first power play unit with McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, Bouchard, absolutely stacked power play unit. So you're going to have to keep your eyes on them, especially McDavid and Draisaitl. Remember, they were key to winning Game 1 for them. So you're going to have to keep an eye on a dynamic duo. And number 5, use that home crowd momentum. Of course, Game 3, not in Edmonton. Games 1 and Games 2 were in Edmonton. Games 3 and Game 4 will be in Sunrise, Florida. And with that home crowd, with a raucous home crowd, a fast start to this game could put the Oilers in jeopardy and on their heels early. And for the Oilers side, we need to see another Connor McDavid and Draisaitl spark. We need the dynamic duo to step up again, just like they did in Game 1. We need to see that for the Oilers in Game 3. Number 2, refine that power play execution. Like I said, Oilers are 2 for 10 on the power play through their first 2 games. Power play needs to improve throughout the series, and the power play needs to step up in Game 3. Like I said, their first power play unit is absolutely stacked. Overall, the power play unit is really good. At least I know the stats say otherwise, but in my opinion, in my perspective, that is a really good power play unit from the Edmonton Oilers. But I know the stats don't show that, though. But from my perspective, I really think they have a good power play unit. Number 3, Stewart Skinner bounce back. So we need to see a Stewart Skinner bounce back in Game 3 after losing Game 2. We need to see a Stewart Skinner bounce back in Game 3 for the Oilers to go up 2-1 and possibly try and steal. I'm not saying that they will, but possibly trying to steal Games 3 and Games 4 on the road, so they can have a 3-1 series lead heading back to Edmonton for Game 5. But I'm not saying it will. It's a possibility, though. We'll just have to see how everything will go. And then another thing, stay on Brad Marchand. Brad Marchand had a lot of chances in Game 2. He also had a goal in Game 1. He had 2 goals in Game 2. And he's, in my opinion, in my perspective, he's starting to become on fire in this series. He's starting to become on fire in this series. We can't let him, at least for the Oilers side, we can't let him get off to a fast start in this series because he's starting to heat up in this series. We got to slow that momentum down. We need to stay on Brad Marchand. And another thing is win battles on the board. Florida has owned the walls. They own the battles on the board. Edmonton has to get stronger and step up in the dirty areas. And the bonus one, which could be a hard one, maintain Florida's high-power offense. So I know, again, this is going to be a hard one, but, you're on the road for Game 3. The Panthers had a home crowd behind them. Oilers need to stay on their offense, shut down the energy. I don't know if that makes sense or not. It probably didn't. But the point is, keep the crowd quiet. Don't let the energy get too loud in the building. Stay on Florida's high-power offense. Limit their score chances. Again, that's going to be a hard task. The Oilers need to do it in Game 3. Betting odds for this, the Panthers are the favorites to win Game 3 at minus 138 on the money line. Oilers are the underdogs at plus 120. And the total for over and under is 6.5 goals for this game. But we'll just have to see. That'll happen. Probably won't happen. It probably will, probably won't. These games have been very close, both going into overtime so far. So could see another close game for Game 3. That's going to do it for this episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Really do appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure that you're following the Hockey Talk TG podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. If you normally listen to it on audio, both of you guys have a great rest of your day. Keep God first as always. Be blessed. Enjoy Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final. Should be another great one. And I'll see you guys on Wednesday for another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Take care.